Good evening. Design Review Board 2 public meeting of November 3rd, 2011 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves during the meeting, and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker's cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You'll be called to present a case or speak on a specific item as desired. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current DRB agendas are available by calling our DRB hotline at 818-548-3171 or by visiting our website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and DRB reconsideration and appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the DRB decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. And roll call. Mr. Garagos.
Yes, here.
Mr. Malikian.
Yes.
Ms. Sakai.
Here.
Mr. Zarifian is absent. Report regarding the posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on October 26, 2011. Oral communications. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on an item not a part of this agenda? Any cards by any chance?
We do not
Nope.
have any cards.
All right. Then we're down to our regular review calendar. We'd like to request, there's nothing under staff announcements. Under information items, we do have 2 items, but we'd like to proceed with those after the design review board cases. We're making some copies. So,
Okay.
So we'll jump down to design review board cases on our first case on Emmanuel Drive.
Okay. Then, if you're ready, 2 PDR 2011-035-A. 3577 Manual Drive.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, as noted, the first case is on Emmanuel Drive. It's a deck, a new deck. The Design Review Board is being asked to look at decks based on a new ordinance, number 5747, that went into effect this September, in which the Design Review Board is to review all decks that exceed 8 feet in height. And so I would like to go through it very briefly. The top plan is a site plan that shows the existing deck. Bottom plan shows the proposed deck. There are 8 oak trees on site. I've highlighted them here on a topography map for you to look at. Now, the difference between these 2 decks, they want to demolish the existing one, which we have some photographs here and we have photographs there that have already been removed. Over there you can look at. Several of those decks that you'll see, please look at the writing, those are neighbor decks. Not all those decks are the applicant's decks. So how do the 2 decks differ? First, the new deck located here will be about, well, the existing deck is just say 600 square feet. It's 599. The new deck will be 560 square feet larger. It will, in width, it will be 8 feet wider and will be 6 feet deeper. And it ranges in height from 1 foot higher to 3 feet higher, and that is for the new deck will be 5.5 feet to 11 feet 3 inches. Those numbers are 1 to 3 feet higher than what the existing is. And this is located in the hillside area. And I wanted to, the photographs that the applicant showed, he's trying to show, if you look at the TV screens, I don't know if they're, the applicant, the little red dot shows where the house is, looking down the hill behind. And the applicant in these photographs here is trying to show that you can't see the deck. And for the most part, I have to agree with. Sort of. It's very difficult, but and that would be right here, this end of the house, where the smallest deck is, right here. And this is what the proposed deck is going to be height. So this is the shortest end, be like 4 feet now, or excuse me, when it's constructed. So that's the view. Other than that, the view is pretty much what you see there. Okay, now, as far as the planning department, we've had some concerns, though, because we didn't feel that when you look at the deck, that it's consistent with what the hillside design guidelines want for the site planning. We feel that the doesn't terrace down the hill. It doesn't really follow the design guidelines. What we have is we're creating a mass. It's a very functional mass. It meets the needs of having a nice large deck in the back. But we felt that the council's been interested in following topography, breaking it down so that the overall height from the top of the railing to the grade should not exceed 8 feet. And we've addressed that both in our site planning, our mass and scale, and then finally here in our review of the design and detailing. We thought also that colors and textures should be more naturally blending in. So we felt the white texture, which is pretty much why it's really not colors, because this is our focus. You have a black railing. This one shows more of a decorative. We felt that the simpler design would be more reflective of the house style, and a little darker stucco color and maybe something of a heavier finish that to reflect more of an earth as opposed to this whiter, brighter, and a fine sand finish. And then we have our comments. This reflects that, and it also reflects a concern that we have for one oak tree. We were never able to get a drawing of the oak tree, but this is it here. It's 18-inch. This will be popping out a little bit so that I drew a little circle here, basically where the trunk of the oak tree will be from the new deck, right there. Yes, sir. That would be the oak tree right there. And so we did have a couple of conditions that we've asked here because we're recommending return for design about showing the location of that oak tree, making sure it's going to be safe. In your report, though, the urban forester said they didn't think it'd be a problem because they'd be using pilings. Planning, though, does have a concern. We just want to express it. But that should have been in your report as an attachment, just as an FYI there. And then, of course, as I mentioned, everything else, designing the deck to follow the topo, use a rough tone type of stucco and color that's more earth tone, and a simpler railing design. And that's pretty much the gist of my presentation. I'll be glad to go over it in more detail if you'd like. The applicant's here. We have some interested parties here as well.
Okay, we have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
A couple. I wasn't able to actually get on the deck, but if you were on the deck, could you actually see any of the neighbors?
Yeah, you could. Yes, sir. You could see. I will say this: neighbors below, no, you can't see anybody directly below. If you look out at an angle, you'll see this. So if you're standing up here on this deck here, you can barely see that little brown item there. You can look out and you can see this. But if you're standing...
You can't see the neighbors' yards in back.
Not down the hill, no.
Okay.
I walked the whole place, and it's a jungle. You have all these... If you look here, you got all these oak trees. Again, we try to get the applicant to show real drip lines. These do not reflect the drip lines back there. And if you look, I could take ours right down to Google Map and show us right below the house and see the deck looking straight up. You'll see it at that angle at the top of the hill, angling through the small part, which is portion right here.
Second question, and this might have just been an 12 feet where it came out of the ground to top a rail. Is that something that's new?
Yes,
That is new?
that's the design review threshold for staff to bring to you to review.
Oh, so they're allowed to go to 12. It's just
Yes.
the threshold is making...
That's correct.
saying 8. Okay.
Well, let me back up. Prior to the ordinance, if somebody came in, we've been even allowing up, with the railing on top of the railing, maximum 15 feet. Maximum 15 feet. And it did not require design review if we felt that colors, materials were appropriate for the house. And here in September, the city council passed ordinance that I cited here in your staff report that says for design review purposes, not code purposes. We're not ending it at 8 feet by code except as a design review threshold. It's at 8 feet. It triggers automatically. We have to bring,
Right.
like the 700 square feet for a house.
If I'm just saying it's triggering it, you're recommending it goes to 8.
Yes.
Half till 12.
Yeah,
Just that
yeah.
the 8 is triggering is already here.
Yeah,
Right. Okay.
that's correct.
I just want to clarify. Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you. Okay, let's get started. RJ Tarabi? You have 5 minutes to, please, state your name and address, please.
Yeah, good evening. My name is RJ Torabi. I'm the designer for the project and for Emmanuel Drive. And the purpose of this deck, we're trying to redesign it because of the old deck is basically is falling apart, is not safe, and be sitting there I don't know how many years. And even the residents, they cannot use it. It's not safe for the practical purposes. They don't have no backyard beside that one. And we're trying to, that's why we're trying to demo it and build a brand new one. And basically, some area that the height increasing from 8 foot to 11 foot because I have a sliding door, the existing sliding door that you're walking out to the deck, that area increasing the height for the new deck, and that's why. And the slope is running along the structure that we have at the site. And basically, the color that we are proposing is a white texture because we're trying to match with the building, but we still can't change the color to anything get recommended. We don't have no objection with that one. The color could be changed for the stucco. And basically, we made Herbert Forest at the site. She didn't have no objection about the oak tree because we were far away from it. And plus, the deck is overhanging 4 feet, which is the foundation is recessing 4 feet inside. Is getting further out from the oak tree. It's not going to disturb.
But how do we know that? You're saying it's far away, but how do we know it's exactly where it is? Do you have a survey with the drip lines done?
Well, we have a basically original survey was there, and when she was there, she measured, she dropped the tape there. I was there with her.
Who's she?
And Herbert Forrest, the lady, she was there. She came from the city. She came to the site. One time I met her there before we go schedule for the hearing.
Have you gone down the list of the 5 items?
Yes.
Okay. So, number 1, showing accurate drip line of the oak tree, even though that she measured. Are you able to provide that?
Sure, I can do that. No,
Have you done that?
not yet. Didn't prove. Basically,
You know, because of these, we're going to send you back and have you bring it back.
Basically, I follow up the original survey and was showing all the location of the oak trees, and those I designed on base of that.
Okay. Any comments on number 3, design deck, so that it will terrace with the site of a natural? Do you have any comments on that?
No, I'm fine.
You're okay stepping down the deck?
No, stepping down, no, because if you're stepping down, you're losing the flat surface of it, and there's no reason to spend all this money. Then what do you gain it from that? It's not really practical for the homeowner.
So as far as the number 4 and the 5, which is the texture stucco material and also the railing, simplify the railing, you have...
Sure, I can do that one. The texture, the color, no problem. We can change it from the white to any other
Okay.
color, no problem.
Do you have any questions for the applicant?
Did you know beforehand the questions that staff had about terracing? Had they talked with you about that? Had they mentioned that to you?
Actually, we spoke before. I met Roger also before. But then that's how we came for the hearing. that didn't work the way they were recommending. I thought there is no reason if trying to dropping down, stepping down the deck, it doesn't really worth it to spend money on this deck. And the other way you look at the existing deck, is not even safe to keep it. I don't know.
Okay.
That's the problem.
All right. Do we have any more questions? Okay. Just for the record, if you can state your name and address, please.
My name is RJ Torabi, Torabi. My address 21777 Ventura Boulevard, Suite 234, Woodland Hills, 91364.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next speaker, Alice Cogley. If you state your name and address.
Alice Cugley, 1026 Cayman Street. We were happy to receive this paper at the meeting that was canceled on October 20th, so we had a lot of time to review it. And we were also very, very concerned about number 3 with our neighbors, because someone already has made a deck with supports on it on Islanita, which shows up to, how can I put this, to the people on Dolorita and others, and it's a huge structure sticking out that's very
This
visible.
is the one
and
that
we're
you're talking about
concerned
is
if this
immediate
one will do
adjacent.
the same thing, because it sounds like he's going to be out farther over the hill, quite a few feet, so it will be more visible, even though there's trees there. Are those trees going to remain as tall as they are, or will some of them be cut? Or that was a big concern.
In reference to the house, where are you located?
I'm located on Cayman, and I can go out of my yard and look right across to that hill.
You can.
And
okay.
also our area, if you have not been in that area, is almost bowl-shaped. Half a bowl, I suppose, because you have to go into it. But all the neighbors can see around on the upper hills, and this house is on the higher ridge, so it's going to be visible to others.
Is it visible now? Can you see the backyard?
Well, that's what we're wondering about the trees, the oak trees.
Okay.
And if it sticks out farther, I don't have an engineering mind, but it will stick out farther, and I'm presuming that it will be more visible.
But right now, you can't see the existing deck.
Right now, no. It's okay now. If it was the same as it is now, and just replaced with a good sturdy deck, we wouldn't be able to see it. Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is it Sudarshan?
Sudarshan, yes.
Sudarshan, if you can, I don't want to kill the name.
Good evening.
You state your name and address.
My name is Sudarshan Malhotra, and I live on Alanita Avenue, 1058, which is right below the property that's being considered. I'm very glad that I have come, because I can read the report and see that there's some concern about the design. If the deck is extended, and I don't wish to suggest that it's not extended, but I would like to make sure that it doesn't slide down onto my property if there were to be an earthquake, God forbid. And the other thing I would address to the owners of the properties, that if there are young people there in the house, I don't know, I've never had the pleasure of meeting the owners, though we share only the boundary. If there is a noise factor at night, I'm a pretty old man and sleep very lightly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is it Ian Cogley? You have 2 cards here. Are they both yours, or?
No. Well, one is...
From last time, maybe.
Oh, it could have been from the last
yes,
time.
I
see.
came last time.
I see.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the review board, my name is Ian Cugley. I'm a long-time resident of Oakmont Woods. Regards case number 2 PDR 2011035A. Okay, Glendale is proud of its unique neighborhoods, and this is one. It is low density and surrounded by wooded slopes. Any development that detracts from this degrades the ambience of the neighborhood. Giant mansions, outsized decks are in conflict with the spirit and letter of Glendale Municipal Code, Chapter 30.47040A, 1 through 3. Okay, in this particular instance, the unarticulated design of the deck and its size, as described in paragraph 1 of the staff report, site planning, would seem to be in conflict with the city's hillside design guidelines. In fact, the phrase on the staff report does not appear consistent with city's hillside design guidelines appears 6 times in the report. 6 times. Okay, from my own almost daily observation, the new construction of the deck as proposed and its vertical enclosure, which I suppose has to be there for the code, will, from the 1000 block of Islanita Street, nearly merge with a large covered deck or extension that's next door to it at the east at 3571 Emmanuel Drive. So it'd be this huge block, you can see, further detracting from the open nature of the neighborhood. The oak trees. The staff report refers to an oak tree canopy that will give privacy to the downslope properties. But as I mentioned before, from the perspective of Islanita Street, it's a different story. Also, the oak tree canopy can become diseased or cut down. In fact, the longevity of one tree, which has there 8 trees, it's 1/8 of the total of the canopy, is in doubt, as the report states. Something about the drip lines and that. As states in paragraph 1 under landscaping. So the whole future of the tree screen is very much uncertain. In conclusion, I would ask the board to decline to issue any variance of any kind and make a ruling consistent with the city's hillside design guidelines and the design review staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. R.J. Tarabi, do you have 2 minutes to rebuttal or reply? Okay, thank you. Then public session is closed. Mr. Garagos?
Just got a question for staff really quick. Is there a stamp survey or anything, or these? Is it actually stamped by a surveyor? Is it verified by anyone? Okay. Because I think that would be important, just to verify not only location of trees, but what the actual topography is, and that it maintain it after it proceeds. I think in general it's difficult. People have a right to do a deck, so the question is how it's done. It's not really whether you have the right to do it. So, I mean, in my mind. But there's 2 aspects of the direction we were given. One is the maximum height, and the other is giving it some kind of variety, 3-dimensionally, as a means of, just like the code says, working it into the landscape. So I think in my mind, I see those 2 as positives and ways that this project could become better. So I don't have a problem with the idea of doing a deck and upgrading the deck. I think it would be better than what is there now. It's definitely better than the one next to it. I think the one next to it would never be approved. So and my hope is that one day, if something ever happened to that one, that it would have to come back to a board and then be redesigned. So I don't really want to use the neighbor as some reason for approving this one, because that one isn't. This one is an outlier of a bygone era. So So in my mind, in sending this back for redesign, which is my intent, it's not with the idea that you can't do it, but that you need to do it in a way that is more sensitive. So taking those two aspects of the direction we were given, I think they're positive. I don't have a problem with an area of the deck getting close to the 12-foot height, which is the height, is my understanding, is where it comes out of the ground to the height of the railing. So as a portion of that deck, having that height, I don't have a problem. She's reaching for the microphone. What did I say? What did I say wrong?
This is actually one of the items we're going to review with you, because one of the reasons it's here before you is because of the new code provision.
Well, it makes it difficult for me to answer this question if I haven't been told about it yet.
No, that's right. I just wanted to clarify the new code provision. It regulates what has to come before you and clarifies what staff can sign off on. The code provision that identifies I believe it's 15-foot height of the deck from grade to the top of the railing, that's an existing code that has not changed.
Okay, thank you. So you actually have more height to deal with. The issue of you being over 8 is why you're here. So I mean, that in my mind is a separate issue. You're already here, so I'm assuming it'll be more than 8 feet. I don't know if I'd want it to be to 15, because I think 15 is pretty close to what the neighbor has. So I don't know if that's a positive. But I think, just like anything else in projects we do, I think I'm flexible, personally, letting you get towards what a maximum is if the entire project isn't that way. I mean, there has to be an acknowledgement that you are on a hillside, that other people are going to see it. And I think it's unfortunate when you look at hillsides and you just see big strips going across. And if there isn't a lot of differential topography between houses, it ends up just being this big row of handrail, for hundreds of feet, which I think is unfortunate on a hillside. So there's a couple aspects that I would like to see if we decide that it comes back. I think there needs to be a survey, a license survey, locating the trees, locating the topography. I think that there needs to be a change in elevation. There needs to be some acknowledgement that it's on a hillside. I think you're going to have just as much footage as you are proposing now. You may even have more. The lower one could probably even grow a little bit. How much you move that up and down is, part of the what you're going to be exploring. And I just forgot the other aspect. Now we'll think of it later. But that'll get it started. Color materials, I think, is flexible. I mean, the idea of matching the house, I don't think is as important. I would rather it go an earth tone as a means of having it disappear. So the idea of matching the house isn't a positive to me. I'd rather see it a darker color and have it disappear. The other aspect is, I just remembered, I think the neighbors have a good point. I mean, we're supposing that all of this vegetation is going to stay and it'll do this nice cover. There's no guarantee that's going to happen. That's why I think there should be a landscape plan, at least for just the immediate area beyond this deck that's part of the resubmittal, so that at least we know there are these elements that are being added based on this new design that we can guarantee would be there or that need to be maintained, as opposed to a landscape canopy that is of an unknown size and unknown duration. So.
Thank you.
Pick up on that point, because I think we had this conversation a while back about landscape plans for residential projects. If they have existing landscape that is sufficient, in which the case they might, we just can't see it because we can't get close enough to the property, that if they took pictures of that landscape and said, this is what we propose to keep here, and it won't be destroyed in the process of the project. So that's kind of what you're holding yourself to. That's sort of your landscape plan. You don't have to go out there and locate all plant materials. You have to put new plant materials in, because I think you will want to keep it naturalistic. You don't want to make it a manicured landscape to begin with. So I agree with your point. I think that's important to show that there is landscape there that will be maintained in the way that it currently is, if there's enough. And if there isn't, then that's also good to see, and you would then have to propose augmenting that to create this landscape buffer that you're saying blocks all the construction of the mass. Speaking about staff's other points, I think I agree with the materials and colors. I don't see it, again, as matching the house. I think it matches the landscape. The deck, you don't want it to be this massive structure that becomes part of the house, so you want it to kind of grow out of the landscape. So since the applicant was fine with the colors and the materials of the finished materials of the deck, going more towards that direction, I don't think that's an issue, but I would recommend the earth tone color scheme, a simpler railing design to just kind of make it go away, rather than making it punch out at you and be an element that's even more in your view than it is now. I also don't have a problem with. I mean, I think all the points you said are perfectly stated. That the ability to have a deck, to go outside and enjoy your outdoor space. You're in a hillside. You have no other landscaping area, so the size is not really the point for me. I think it's just the consideration of being in the hillside and matching and being sensitive to the hillside. So I don't know. For me, if it splits, if the massing it's more about how much it comes away from the building than it is about the levels. So I'm kind of not. That doesn't concern me as much if it splits or if it's the size it is now. What else is the issues? But
Are you saying the variety could be handled by, it would be different in plan, so that when you look up on an angle, you would see variety?
yeah,
Are you saying?
Right,
so
right,
It would,
so that-
it would change in plan,
In
so that
plan.
when you viewed it, it would have a profile
right.
in silhouette.
I think
At an
something
angle.
should change so that it's not just a big mass that sticks out, but I don't necessarily think it has to go the up down. It could go in and out.
Right, yeah, just,
Right.
yeah.
Right. So it could do either. It could do both. It doesn't want to get too fussy, but also
Mm-hmm.
we don't want it to be just one simple large mass that's a bunch of railing that goes across in a very, I guess, massive. I don't know, put the simplistic way. You want it to have a little more variety, and it just could kind of break up the planes a little bit. So that's it. I think, yeah, we covered the rest of them. So.
Thank you. Well, I think as a general comment, 4 out of 5 of these items could have been done and could have been taken care of before it came in front of us. As you mentioned, you were fine with the number 4 and the 5, which are the textured color and also the railing. As a general comment on this 12-foot or the 15-foot deck height, I think I want to kind of propose a concept there that it may help staff try to alleviate some of these issues that are coming. And I think because we're adding the height of the railing as part of this overall height, I think we should give an incentive to people that if they're proposing a railing that is more transparent, less of a mass, I think that should be given as an incentive so that the railing is not counted towards the overall height. I think that's the mass is what we're dealing with. I've said this once before, and looking at this three-dimensionally, putting steps on a deck, for me, I think it creates more issues, more mass issues. What it's going to do is you're going to have let's say a level area deck, and as you come out and you go further down, let's say you're stepping the deck, so from the back, you're going to see a kind of a step down on the deck area. But what you're doing is at the same time you're increasing the height of the building. Because ultimately this building, you don't have a space between the deck and the building. So the wall of the building is going to actually increase. And there's no way to hide that mass. I think as an incentive or a proposal or a solution to this mass issue is, I think, by creating an additional wall in front of this as a planter area and then creating the step from the lower section of the hill, and as it steps up, you start creating this contour or the following of the mass. I think with that, what you're going to do is you're going to introduce more landscaping that will ultimately hide the retaining wall, and therefore you have more of a camouflaged structure rather than more an apparent structure, which over the deck, you literally can't hide the mass. You're just going to see more of a mass. So I wouldn't mind seeing some alternate in that level, trying to understand what this thing is going to look like. It is very important. I mean, the first two items on this it has to do with the trees. And ultimately, that's going to help you with your project and also give the assurance to the neighborhood that you're ultimately proposing a deck that is going to be hidden away. Now, as far as the oak tree and all the massive trees down below, obviously these are oak trees. So, by owning the land, you're ultimately responsible maintaining those trees. And obviously, when you go through the construction, any damages occur. I don't know if there's going to be any bonding or any kind of an assurance that the city can request to maintain these trees, and nothing will affect that. Another helpful thought would be is to somehow depict the actual location of the proposed deck in relation to the adjacent deck. So this way people can actually see how far this thing is coming out as a reference point, that it may just give that assurance to people, and they'll realize that you're not really coming out that far, and as it has or it is on the adjacent property. But I think the color is really important. I think by introducing a darker color, or even you're going to be proposing or building this structure with pilasters and grade beams, I'm assuming. So in that sense, you may want to propose a textured block or some sort of a colored, darker material that kind of blends into the hill, and therefore your deck is not as apparent and as massive as it feels right now. Also, the railing, you have an opportunity. I mean, you have a very simple little, why introduce more ornate and ornamental elements there that will be more visible to the neighborhood. So I think there is a good opportunity for simplify that and be able to address that. But I would love to see an exercise of a lower retaining that you will propose a landscaping. Either way, stepping down the deck or creating, it works for me. I think personally, I think creating a retaining that you will introduce more landscape, more luscious landscaping or within that area will ultimately help hide the deck rather than stepping it down and creating more of a mass in the building. So,
Can I comment on that, actually? Do you mind me commenting?
Sure.
I think actually what's happening is you're still going to have the same amount of mass because you're limited as a accessory structure. So even if the entire building comes out to a 15-foot height, or if you step down a portion of it, the entire structure is going to be limited to 15. So I don't think you're actually, by stepping down, going to create more height.
No, I'm not talking about
Actually,
the
you're going to minimize
deck.
it because the area that stepped down will show
No, but the
less.
deck is going to be minimized. But what you're doing is the building behind where the deck is being attached to the building. Obviously, right now you have a deck that the building sits on, right?
Right, but I'm
so
saying
if you're
when
lowering
you're
that,
looking-
the house cannot just stay there. That house needs to come down. The facade of the wall needs to extend down to the lower deck area. Unless you create a hollow section under the building or create a landscape or something there.
Yeah, but the lowest area is still the lowest area. But go
You're
ahead.
looking at a wall, so you're looking at the house wall coming down beyond.
Right, but the house wall is not going to be any lower if it steps down.
Maybe I should sketch this up and my thought.
Picture of it?
The way the topo runs here, this is the only difference, is that we have an average current slope of 25%, then we have a pad. The entire house is sitting on the pad. The deck extends at the hill. It drops off almost immediately behind the house. So this wall here at that elevation is not going to change. It's just that deck down here. And they'll be anchored by an elevation at the base.
But my question is, okay, if you lower the deck at that level,
Right.
what happens what happens to the hill?
You still can't go any lower. The bottom of the deck is, because your height is already.
I'm not talking about the deck, I'm talking about the building. Let's say you're lowering the deck 4 or 5 feet. What happens to the building?
Doesn't get any bigger. Well, the overall doesn't get any bigger because the bottom where it hits the ground is a given. It's not going to
It's on
get
a
any
pad.
lower.
I think that the idea is to reduce the mass. The
but
overall,
see-
it still stays the same.
It does, but I think if you're looking up at something on an angle and it came down and it showed less, I think overall your appearance of this would be less because its wall out on the lowered section is still going to be limited at the bottom. So all you're changing is the top. You're moving the top down because the bottom is held at the 15. Because your upper section is your height,
Right.
and where it comes out of the ground is given at the bottom. So all you're doing, what I'm saying is by stepping it down, you're lowering the one area.
You are
that's
lowering the mass, but what I'm concerned about is what happens to the back of the deck where it's near the house. What happens to that? How does that get
If it
reduced?
actually happened at the face of the house, I could understand your point. But I think what's going to happen is there's going to be some space from the house, then it's going to step down to a lower area.
Because
Okay,
it's a slope.
what happens to that
It's on
space?
a-
No, I understand. But what I'm saying is right now the deck is right against the building.
That's a good point. I think that's the way you handle the terrace, though. I mean, what I'm getting at is that I think if you're looking at it anywhere on the lower angle, so you're looking up at it, any reduction in the height of the deck, you're going to be fixed at the bottom. So if you lower the height of the deck and you're looking up at it, you'll be looking at less mass.
Right. There's no argument on the actual mass of the deck. What I'm more concerned about is the
Right, the house
is the
wall is
house
just
itself,
coming down.
and
Right, sure.
you can't hide that. What I'm saying is, you're
you could
solving
hide
one problem,
You
but
could
then you
hide
have another issue, which you
I mean, you
can
can do like a
ultimately.
planter or something.
That's what
Sure,
I'm saying.
sure.
Plants.
Yeah, you can put
Put a planter
planter,
at that point.
and maybe that planter can occur in the front, because then in front of the deck actually will create a lot more, it would help a lot. I personally think that it
I actually think what might be the problem with that is that then that becomes your new low side now, right? And
not really. If you're further,
He's
if you're more
hoping to
than
do a
5
can-
or 6 feet from the retaining,
it's a separate structure.
it's a separate structure.
There's only angle from the down,
Okay.
you have all those.
Well, no, I'm not talking about go down like 30 feet. I'm just talking about whatever the deck
Well,
is,
this one is
5 or
close.
6 feet out.
This one
so-
is close, though, that one.
And that's why I think we need a survey.
Yeah,
So-
I agree.
Yeah, or you cut that corner back and you pull it in, and then you drop the other side.
And this
This one would be
can
a-
actually
A lot of-
happen on the highest part, and then it kind of fades into the earth. So on the high side or the lowest part of the deck, you don't have anything, and as you go further down, as the slope is continuing, you add this other retaining that it kind of feathers into the. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
It
Kind of
could be.
redesign the deck, and I think that the problem is that the applicant has come by and just said, this is a very simple idea, just go out as far as I can, do a
And,
very
and,
flat
and I've always
area.
had a problem with that, is that, we get the simple projects and the applicants expect us to design it for them and come up with a solution, which I don't think it's in our
Well, I think the
purview
applicant
for us
would like to have just a
Right.
very big area that goes out.
Of course.
But as a hillside
Of course.
guideline, we would like to have it incorporated into the hillside, and so that creates a little more ingenuity, a little more design elements
Right.
that go into it, which I think creates a more visually interesting project.
Sure.
And if I was the homeowner at the house, that you'd also get a more experiential experience out of it, because it's not just one big open area.
Right.
And I think that we're trying to solve that problem.
Yes,
It's not our
it's
job.
not our job. Exactly.
So-
I completely agree. I completely agree. So,
So I think we just move on and.
I think Stephanie had some.
I just want to thank you for that discussion, because it does help us better understand what the board is looking for, so that we can in turn, with even more confidence, let the applicants know that this is the direction that we've gotten consistently from the board. We've heard that from you before, and we're
Just
hearing it from you
the
again.
public in general, when they're adding a deck, the whole driving force behind this deck addition on a hillside, on a downhill side, is to have a level area of the backyard that they're missing.
Right. And that's
Challenge is, how do you get that backyard for them?
it is a challenge that we've seen often, and part of the reason that the code has been changed to have that maximum is because we were finding that applicants, because the code allows for the staff, as it was before, the code allowed for staff to simply approve over the counter a deck in the back of a house. We knew that this issue had come up several times because of the visibility, and so you're once again confirming that that was the right decision that the council made. So if I could simply go over some of the recommendations that we've heard so before you make a motion, that a licensed survey is required so that the topography and trees can be accurately identified.
I think that should extend beyond the property line to make sure that we cover the deck area as well, the adjacent deck, if it's possible, or somehow we show.
So we're going to say if possible, because that may be a challenge. So if possible, include the neighboring deck on the licensed survey. I have
It's just where, at the one edge.
It doesn't have to be
right.
that
I think we
approximate.
know what direction that is, and we'll include that in the condition. And to show at least a partial landscape plan. It doesn't need to extend all the way to the property line down the hill, but a partial landscape plan that shows the existing landscaping and proposed landscaping if existing landscaping is not sufficient. Materials and colors should match the hillside rather than matching the house. Recommend earth tone colors and a simple railing design that minimizes the visibility of the deck. And I think it would be important to state in the conditions, to repeat what you've said here, the ability to have the deck is important to preserve, but it must be designed to properly fit. The size is not the particular issue, but variations in plan and or section would be important to make that design fit in with the hillside. And then we also have consider creating a planting area at, and this is where I may need Chair Malekian's help, creating a planter area at the edge between the house and the deck so that it visually separates the deck from the building. This would add landscaping and also help to camouflage the deck.
A consideration or condition?
Well, I think it's an alternate.
They're all, okay, they all seem to be considerations because you seem to be asking for redesign.
Fine. And I don't think I want to see a planter or a section for the entire deck. I think in the lower section where the highest elevation is, in the 11-foot section or the 12-foot section or whatever.
So now are we talking at the, where the deck starts and gets separated from the house, or at the bottom?
Let's say along here you have a,
Okay.
and it kind of dies in where, you have like about 8 foot here. So you have a section here that kind of hides this, and then whatever that is.
So at the bottom of the deck to hide that wall of the deck,
No, I mean, I don't
as
want
a
that to be
suggestion.
a solution, but I
Right.
think I want to see a rendering
Or landscape
or
that might
something, a
do that. Or
landscape.
landscape
Yeah.
that might do that same
Right.
thing.
Okay.
And that may be the solution. I don't know, but I think that option versus the stepping of the deck, I think
I
those
see.
two options should be presented to us so we can make the decision on which one we go.
Were you also suggesting a planter at the top of the deck with plants that cascade over the top of the wall, or did I just misinterpret?
We were talking about if there was a terrace that happened at the house, such that there was a lower section, so that you're increasing the face of the house, that you could put a planter, a
Okay.
raised planter, or just box hedge, up on a thing, that could help minimize the increase of the house face at the house, not,
Okay, so how about if the way we word it is to provide landscaping that would visually minimize the vertical surface created by the deck?
I was thinking that the survey was a condition, not a consideration. Is that
Yes,
possible?
yes.
You mentioned that they were all considerations, that's why.
I'm sorry, what I was referring to was your artful recommendations
I
for,
didn't even
for,
compliment me. Didn't even compliment it. Can we just go quickly through which ones are conditions and which are considerations?
and I do think
motion to it,
Mr.
I'll-
Baxter may have something to add.
On the survey, we are talking about having the drip lines, aren't we?
Yes.
Sure, yeah.
All of them, or just the one closest to the deck?
All of the oak tree drip lines.
Very good.
I don't know that it's, okay, well, it'll be, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so
Was
as a
everything you said- was
as a
everything you said a
condition, a license survey that will show existing oak trees and drip lines, other existing prominent landscape features, topography, and as much as possible the adjacent deck to the.
Actually, Mr. Chair, they actually show it. It's just not a stamped plan, but if you look there, you'll see.
What direction is that, Mr. Baxter?
I would say like east and west. Either side, they're both shown.
Okay.
To your right and to your left.
So
I
the
think,
one that the board would like to make sure is shown
To verify
on.
the actual location.
Yes,
Yes.
I think.
Okay, to verify the locations of the decks to the east and west. As a
trunk and the drip are the most important, primarily where it's being mostly affected by the deck. I mean, that to me is the most important part.
Okay, so the trunks and drip lines of all trees or just the oak trees? All mature
The
trees?
reason I think you have to do the rest of them is they're assuming the rest of them are part of the camouflaging. So that's why I think you need to show it. I mean, I'd hate to make them do that, but they're assuming that that's part of their camouflage.
Okay, so the trunks and canopies of all the mature trees and all the oaks, what I would suggest that we heard as a condition was that materials and colors should match the hillside rather than the house. I think we heard that as a condition. And we heard recommend earth tone colors and a simple railing design to minimize the visibility of the deck. And then there are recommendations to provide variations in plan and or section that I would say, based on what we've heard, that there's a requirement for the design to fit in with the hillside, and then as considerations, consider stepping in plan and or section, consider providing landscape to minimize the visibility of the vertical walls. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Return for redesign?
Is there something you want to add? Because we're about to make a motion. I mean, you can't. I mean,
You come
just
up.
say yes or no. Yes. Okay. Just come up. You have 30 seconds. I'll reopen the.
No, for the railing, we can use the glass railing that won't be too exposed.
That's up to you. We're not going to tell you what to do. So, I think you have a bigger issues than just the railing. Okay. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
A
With
sec.
the conditions and recommendations noted. Considerations noted.
Yes, I second it.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Yes. Well, the second item,
Thank you.
we only have a card, and that is with the applicant. And question is, are we all okay with that? Do we move this to consent, or can we move that to consent?
If I may, that's not something that you can actually move to consent. You can actually ask that tell staff that it's not necessary to have a staff report and have as speedy deliberations as you would like.
Okay. Do we
Actually, though, I do have a quick correction in the staff report.
Okay, then
So,
let's go ahead and open it.
Just
and then
open it
we
up
may
and
just
okay.
make a motion.
All right. The correction is on the third page.
Well, I
as
think
well
we
as
should see the address. And
Oh,
everything
okay.
for
Yeah, I
the
can do that.
public.
The next project is at 3600 North Verdugo Road. It's a sign program for a recently completed commercial building, and the case number is 2 PDR 2011-002A, continued 2.
Okay.
So the correction that I want to bring up is on page 3, sort of at the bottom, the second to the last paragraph. Identification signs are exempt from obtaining a sign permit if the sign is no greater than 2 square feet in area. Actually, an identification sign that just delineates the street number can be up to 10 square feet, and it's not considered a sign. So what I would suggest is...
An address on a unit that's that big? Or is that a whole building?
Well, it's a building address.
Building
and all
address, okay.
all it can be is
Is just the address.
it can just be the building address.
gotcha.
And so, condition number 1, what I would suggest that we amend that to is the proposed identification sign shall be no more than 10 square feet. If that's, excuse me, okay with you as a condition. And that's condition 1. The other thing I just want to bring up is you did get a letter of support on your desks, and I had one phone call regarding the item from a woman who owns property in the area and was just asking for clarification. I talked to her also prior to the last hearing on this. Okay. So.
Well, do we have any questions for the applicant? Should I open it, or should we make a motion? Or it seems like you have a lot of writings on that.
No, the only question I have is the sign type, but
Do you have a problem
Just a
with this?
clarification, because you brought it up. On that paragraph, you mentioned the board may elect to place a condition of approval on the project that 2 identification sites should not exceed 2 square feet. Do you want to add that to number 1? I'm just because you brought it up.
Well, what I suggest you do is to amend condition number 1 to just state the proposed identification sign shall be no more than 10 square feet in area.
So it could be 3 signs, right, that total 10.
Well, that's what it says
Well-
on number 3, right?
They're only proposing 2 identifications.
I only say because you're mentioning it on page 3, and it's not in the. I'm just wondering if it's for you. I don't if it's going to cause a problem for you in the future that he comes in with 2 signs. Is that a problem?
No, it's not a problem.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, we're going to...
I just
Sure you don't.
Yep. I'll make a motion.
I have one comment about this that in the exhibits. So I just,
Okay, then if you have a comment, then I have to open
Okay.
it and let him present it. So if you...
He doesn't have to. Doesn't have to actually present.
he doesn't have to present it. It's just a
Okay.
comment on.
Just open
All
it. And then,
But you can open it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're gonna open it then. So Nathan Simmons, would you like to come up and state your name and address? And I guess we have a question for you.
Nathan Siemens, 44 West Bellevue, Pasadena.
Okay.
My question is, you have the wall-mounted signs that are on the third or second levels, and then you have the marquee signs, and in your very well put together presentation, you have, and I can't remember which sheet it's on now, you have mocked up for us what it would maybe look like with the tenants' signs already up. I'm wondering if you're going to allow people to use one of the 3 fonts that you're proposing in picking their signage font, or if you're going to pick one of the three fonts and have all the fonts be one font on the building?
All of the tenant signs are one font.
Okay, so then we're allowing you, you have three proposed, and you're going
Yes.
to pick one of the three and then go with,
For the marquees, the ones that go on the orange,
okay,
the orange,
and that's going to,
that'll be the alphabetical.
That'll be all
bold.
one.
Yeah, the rest of them are the other ones.
the building address will be something else, and then the
Probably
ones
be
on
the
the wall will
alphabetic
be
as well. Yeah.
the other thing. So,
But
if
only
it's-
limited to those
those
that are
three.
there, unless it's nationally.
But if it goes on the wall, you're not going to allow them, are you going to allow them to pick, oh, I can go with the building address font, I could use the marquee font?
Well, there's the
There's
three or four of them.
So you're going to have that as one font?
Yes.
Could the national one be on the eyebrow or not?
Excuse me, a national one?
Could the national logo be on the eyebrow or not? It couldn't be. That's
No, it'd have to be a window sign.
Okay? All right,
thank you.
thank you. Public session is closed.
So, actually, let me clarify this. There were, I believe, three fonts proposed, and for the marquee signs, only one of those fonts will be allowed.
So they'll pick whichever, and then whichever they pick, it'll be consistent throughout.
It'll be consistent.
Right.
Okay.
And then for the wall signage, whatever they pick will be consistent for all the wall signage. And then
Aside
address
from
will be
national.
consistent.
Aside from nationals,
What's national?
Okay.
like Starbucks or other.
Oh, yeah,
A logo.
yeah. But that'll be on the door. So it won't be on the wall.
It won't be on the eyebrow.
And it won't be on the eyebrow. I just want to make sure that the wall wouldn't be a mixture of the three,
Okay.
or that I mean, he's showing it that way. I just wanted to
That may be
clarify that.
something that you want to clarify then, because that's not necessarily how I understood it.
Okay.
We
Initially.
just make a note that that
It could just
under
be-
each section, that would be a consistent font of the three.
Right, the type of
Under the type, it would be-
signage
Font
would
type.
be a consistent font style.
For each,
I guess the first
Right.
tenant that goes in has the option, and they'll decide for the entire building.
But the
they'll be
building
very
owner would
happy on
probably
that
pick
first
the
tenant.
font.
I'm sure that first tenant will get lots of perks.
Yeah, it's usually the building.
Do you have wording for that, Stephanie?
Actually, the second tenant, they have.
Font type will be consistent
Font
with
type.
the sign type?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to add that as a condition then.
Each category would be a consistent font.
And you can, well, I guess for the front one, you would.
Are we good? Can I make a motion?
Okay?
Make a motion, we approve 2 PDR 2011-002-A, continue 2, with the conditions noted.
The four conditions.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, a motion was made to approve the project with four conditions. Roll call, or, I'm sorry, was it four
State the
conditions?
condition?
Yes. Roll call.
You want to read them out, or what are you saying?
Are you okay with not
The three that were in the staff
Staff
report,
report.
as well
Okay.
as font type, will be consistent with sign type.
Yes, thanks.
Mr. Garagos?
Yes.
Ms. Sakai?
Yes.
Mr. Malikian?
Yes.
Motion carries 3-0. Thank you.
Go make some.
All right, so we have the minutes.
We have minutes, and then we want to jump back forward to the information items.
Should we
you have any-
the information items, or should we do the minutes first? How do we?
What, I think whatever you prefer.
Let's do the minutes really quick and get it out of the way. We can go to the... Have you had a chance to review? Congratulations.
I don't think I have minutes. Can I see your minutes?
Make a motion to approve minutes of October 20th.
You have a second?
I'm reading it.
Oh.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's hanging out there, so whenever you're ready, just hang in there, so
That pregnant pause.
whenever you want to slam the door on that, you're fine.
Okay, I second the minutes.
This will be a roll call. Mr. Garagos?
Yes.
Ms. Sakai?
Yes.
And Mr. Malikian?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So we have some items to...
Hookah lounges?
Would this be considered as staff report, or?
These are information items. We didn't really expect that much discussion on them.
Okay.
We'll take the zoning ordinance changes first. I've provided to you as a handout the staff report that went to City Council on August 9th. This was adopted by City Council on August 23rd, and I believe went into effect on September 20th of this year. Just be mindful also that there may be some projects that were already in process that some of these provisions would not then apply to. We don't need to cover all of this, although you may be interested in more than the items that I wanted to let you know about. I simply wanted to highlight the items that, as you saw tonight, might affect your work here. I've only distributed to you the staff report, but the link that was in your agenda has attachments that include a strikeout underline version of the zoning code, which would give you the precise language that was changing or not. So for your information, artificial turf was an item that was strenuously discussed by many. We had a landscape advisory group, including the zoning code advisory group, discussing artificial turf. We came up with a variety of options. The council chose to not take any action or change any of the provisions in the zoning code. So artificial turf is allowed, as it always has been allowed, but it does not count as live plant material. So the live plant material requirements that are in the zoning code do still apply. So then I am going to skip now to page 9 of 13 on your staff report, non-conforming ground signs. I wanted to highlight this. This was an item that was brought as part of this report to council because our current code does allow for ground signs in almost all of the city to be a height of 25 feet. There were ground signs that were built prior to that code provision that are taller, that our zoning code does not currently allow those signs to be changed, the sign face to be changed, so that there are times when these non-working signs are left up, and so a variety of options was discussed at the council. There were no changes to the zoning code in regards to ground signs for the majority of the city. However, that's an item that will likely come up again to council. That's an unresolved issue. So then on page 10 of 18, you have miscellaneous cleanups and revisions. Just to let you know, probably since you've all been involved in city processes for a while, you do already know that our cleanups and revisions to the code are ongoing. We have an ongoing list, items that applicants typically apply for variances for, things that we notice as we're working with the code that don't really seem to work very well. We have a running list, and so each year, as part of our ongoing program, we have a zoning code advisory group, and we take these kinds of changes in sort of a, forgive the expression, omnibus zoning code cleanup bill to the council for consideration. So it's a substantial amount of work from the zoning code advisory group and staff, but it's an ongoing process. That said, there are really only a few items here that are going to affect your work. On page 10 of 18, in section 30.11.070, the bottom bullet point on that list is what I wanted to draw your attention to. Minimum lot width for a circular driveway is proposed to increase from 80 feet to 80 feet from 60 feet. That was brought to the Zoning Code Advisory Group and then Planning Commission and City Council because many neighborhoods have concern that on the smaller lots, circular driveways tend to fill the front yard with a look of hardscape pavement that may not be really that appropriate to all neighborhoods. So now if you want a circular driveway on a property that's less than 80 feet wide, you will have to go for a variance. Again, there's at least one project that I can think of that's already in process that will not be subject to asking for a variance. But if such a project comes before you, you have all of the rights that you have to discuss the project.
Can I ask one question? Because
Yes.
we went past it. 3011-020, right above it is the accessory buildings.
Yes.
Was the intent in that any habitable structure? I'm just wondering what we're getting at here. Is it they all become guest houses then, or is it just that how it's labeled? I mean, what is the cleanup that happened in that one? Or what's the intent of whatever the change is?
Yes, it is to clarify that that even though there are a variety of names for such a accessory structure that are not a garage, those really will be considered guest houses, and whatever rules apply to guest houses.
They won't be considered guest
They
houses.
will be.
They will be considered guest
Right.
houses. Okay.
With the exception of garages. Garages are not affected.
So if there was a site square footage issue, it would be triggered because it would be treated guest house.
Roger?
Well,
How does it change it that if it's all considered guest houses as opposed to
in the code, we allow guest houses up to 500 square feet. Other accessory structures, pool houses, there is no square footage requirement.
Oh, so it's pulling those into that.
So
Okay,
it's
that's
sort
fine.
of,
I thought you would still
it's
treat
closing
those.
a little bit of a loophole that existed in the code. You know, someone could call an accessory structure a pool house, and
Even though it was
there would not
habitable,
be-
it wouldn't necessarily have a 500-foot.
Correct.
Okay, that's
That's
okay,
correct,
great,
yeah.
okay. All right. It wasn't to give it some higher status that would then
no.
be difficult to maintain, difficult to attain or anything.
No, it was more to make the standards for all accessory
Habitable structure.
structures except garages consistent internally.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, page 13 of 18, 30.30.030, trash enclosure areas. This is something that you're often looking for in multifamily houses, and so that's a change that happened in the code that might make your work somewhat easier. And then there's the item that affected, that you essentially saw the effect of tonight on page 16 of 18, design review exemptions for decks. Now, if a deck is a maximum of 8 feet above existing grade, it will come to you. We do have an exception in here that allows for decks that actually follow the natural terrain, the kind of deck that you were asking for tonight. that appears to fit in with the natural terrain and is unobtrusive and fits in with the hillside, it would be still measured as a maximum overall height of whatever the deck is, even if it's terraced. So we wanted to allow for the possibility for an applicant who wanted to create a terraced and landscape deck within the hillside to still get their exemption and not have to come to you if they've achieved the requirements that you're consistently asking for. So that's really all I had to highlight. If you have any other questions at this time or any other time, feel free.
Okay. You have any questions? No. All right. Then I guess thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Then I guess we're adjourned.
Oh, there was
Sorry,
one
no,
more.
no, we're not adjourned.
There was one more discussion item that we wanted to mention, and we're happy to report that the city is revamping our website, and we will be creating a page for the design review boards. That might be 1 page or 2 page. Likely it will be 1 page. We have a list of things that we would like to highlight on the design review board page, but we'd really like to hear your input about that. So
You should have that infamous book of that we constantly add projects that, as an example, maybe that should be a link there that will give people examples of.
You know, that's interesting that you ask for that. That's something we could do. Because we do take notes each time, and we do add to that file. Currently, there are 2 or 3 11 by 17 boxes filled with projects. And so the way we use those is that for relevant projects, we will sort of show them to applicants during our meetings prior to when you see them here, and we use them as reference because every project is different. We go through and say, okay, which of these projects would be a good example to show. We could have them online. That would be a substantial amount of work to scan all those plans and create that link. We think that it's serving its purpose, but if you'd like to see it online, we can figure out how we might be able to manage
Thinking that it might be more, you would want staff's direction in terms of how that plan or what aspect of that plan is relevant, as opposed to just putting it out there.
Right.
It needs a little bit, tying it in a little bit better, because it may not be that, there could be aspects of the project that are no longer relevant.
Well, yeah, I mean,
They're not
what it is like you want to
Yeah,
give
ideas,
an acceptable, a deck
direction.
design, or,
Right. Now, as you know, we have a set of comprehensive design guidelines that you've reviewed and have recommended would be adopted citywide. And I think we mentioned to you that the design guidelines, together with the North Glendale Community Plan, went to Planning Commission on October 24th, and they also made the same recommendation in regard to the design guidelines that those be adopted citywide. They made different recommendations in regards to the North Glendale Community Plan, but also recommended that that be moved forward to Council. And so Council may be considering that on November 29th is the date that's scheduled. Once that comes on the agenda, we'll announce it here. At the end of the year, there are often items that get shuffled. We intend for that item to go to Council November 29th, and we will confirm that. That said, once those design guidelines are adopted, those will also give direction to they will be put online immediately. They're already online. We're already referring to them. And that will give all our applicants some level of predictability and an understanding of what you're looking for.
Okay.
So think about that, and maybe we'll list that as an information item to once again, the website item to get your ideas.
Okay, very good.
Thanks.
Thank you. And we're adjourned.